So since it came up, then I mean I can try to do it.
Go ahead.
But I'll leave it to Josh here, since he's the only person that didn't stop in at all, and I am going to continue doing it every stream. By the way, Brian. So
your impressions.
Yeah. If you come up with other stuff,
I'll have to start digging the mine and figure out who I want you to try to do an impression of, so I can come with like some suggestions at the ready.
So basically, what I can do, I can do things, but I need to be given a script of some kind, you know. So
we have to feed you like, okay, I'm giving you the channel points to do this impression, this line from this movie type of thing.
Right. But so I don't know if you caught that part of the discussion at first there, Josh.
Okay.
When you came back. But Brian, was it you that first suggested Elmo?
Yeah, and then I hung around a little bit longer, and then like I think Zelda Man put in more bits, and he's like, more Elmo. So I don't know how long the Elmo thing kept going. But
since they made me do Elmo, and Brian says I did good, I don't listen back to it to find out. Give me something to say as Elmo that Elmo just would absolutely not fucking say. Something that you'd never hear on fucking Sesame Street. Something that sounds completely wrong for Elmo.
I mean, I'm tempted to have Elmo swear at something, but...
Oh, well, why don't you do the quarter mile at a time line? Now I'm hearing it as Elmo in my head, and that's pretty funny.
Well, you're about to hear it as Elmo for real here. Give me just a second. I'll do it. Give me a second. I'm sorry. It's such a weird fucking voice that I can't do it if I don't listen to it and hear the way he says other words. Like the laugh is easy, but I live my life a quarter mile at a time. No, that's horrible. Somehow he became from New York there. I don't know what happened.
I sort of like it though.
Well, the effort's making me laugh, so that's a plus.
In my first attempt to do my like scary voice for Brian and I's intro, even though I'd heard it in my head a lot for about a week and a half, the first time I actually tried to do it, like the first half sentence, I just stopped because it came out like Bane. Well, let me, who knows? Let me give this one a shot with the line.
You gonna try Elmo?
No, with Bane, with the Fast and Furious line.
Like, no, I'm not doing Elmo.
I live my life a quarter mile at a time. Nothing else matters. Not the mortgage. Not the store. Not my team and all their bullshit. For those 10 seconds or less, I'm free.
What if I do the Elmo voice while I'm doing this?
Try it. I don't know what the hell that's going to sound like.
I live my life a quarter mile at a time.
You know, you kind of sound like Harley Quinn. Like
with this going through,
no.
it sounds
Just
like
the
Harley
high pitched,
Quinn?
like the way that your words are inflecting, like with the high pitch. I'm suddenly getting Harley Quinn.
Like this.
Okay.
I live my life a quarter mile at a time.
Maybe it's just the accent too. I think
along those
part of that accent
Yeah,
too.
I can't do high pitched without going there. I
Nothing
don't
else
think.
matters.
All right, well that's probably enough, right? I'll let you guys go off the hook on that one. Hello and welcome to another episode of Bry Guy and his Super Friends. I'm your host, Brian Labick. Joining me for this episode is the only person I know that mouthfucks a Jones soda better than Vin Diesel mouthfucks a beer, Josh Zorch.
So I guess I have to thank Ian for inspiring that to some degree.
Yeah, that's on brand. That's Ian's t-shirt right there. So yeah, I can't take credit for that one. I'll throw that out to Ian for that one because of the shirt.
I'll have to remember to give him my gratitude next time.
Yeah, I hope he
I see
listens
him.
to this part. So we're back for another Never Seen That, where Josh and I have been trading firsts for horror movies and Fast and Furious movies. It's been quite a wild ride so far. I keep forgetting that the deal, I think, started off with me watching Zombieland and then getting 2 Fast and Furious movies from you.
Yes.
So yeah, we're recording this one, at least we're recording back to back with our last trade, which was Cabin in the Woods. So if you're listening to this one by this time, Cabin in the Woods is already out. You've probably, hopefully, already enjoyed Cabin in the Woods.
Oh, they definitely have. They're not going to come all the way to here without hearing that.
So yeah, it might be a little bit off because as we're recording this, we actually haven't watched Cabin in the Woods yet. So it's a little, peek behind the curtain, but we will get there. So you will have enjoyed this. It's one of those future past weird time travel-y things that we're recording this in the past, but you're hearing it in the future, and it's all crazy. So if you're new to the Never Seen That stuff, our format has always been to talk about preconceptions and thoughts before we watch the movie, take a break, watch the movie, and then record post-movie thoughts. We're breaking it up a little bit differently this time. We're doing the previewing section, and then we're going to meet up a few days later to actually watch the movie, and then get together a few days after that to talk over Skype and talk about the movie, see what we thought. So it's a little bit disconnected than what we normally do. And by the time we come around to the discussion of the movie, we'll probably have a few added guests for that. But for right now, it's just Josh and I. And I will also throw out for anyone that's been following along with our Fast and Furious viewing, we're skipping around a bit. I've been hyping this up as like the highlight reels for the Fast and Furious franchise. So we started with the first one, and then we skipped 2 and 3 because they're dog shit, and went to 4, which is slightly confusing because even 1 and 4 have very similar titles. 1 is The Fast and The Furious. 4 is Fast and Furious. So now we are currently on 5. We are on Fast 5. So I at least...
So is that... What is the official title of this movie?
I think Fast 5 is the title.
Okay, so it's not Fast and Furious 5, commonly known as Fast
Right.
5. It's Fast 5 is the title.
Because the next one is like the title card of the movie says Furious 6. So they've really started playing with the titles. Yeah, I mean, really, any of them, you just say Fast and Furious 5. It's
fair.
Like everybody knows. But
Okay.
so I have mentioned, I think every time we do this, I'm trying to show him, ideally, 1, 4, 5, and 6. If we watch any others after that, that's sort of icing on the cake. But that's the meat and potatoes of the Fast and Furious franchise that I would like to show Josh.
And given our deal, we Sarah and I already have our of the 4. We have our last horror movie that we know that we're gonna trade for Fast 6. So that'll be coming down later in a couple of months whenever we get back to this at some point. But we already know what's on the docket. So after 5, we'll get to 6 eventually.
Yeah, at the rate we're going, we'll do this next October. So it'll be Halloween next year.
Well, maybe the shut-in part of the winter will motivate us. Like all of the distractions will be gone in a way. We're just like left in like after like our 7 hours of kind of daylight, and that's all we get. Like maybe that'll be a good motivator. Like, okay, let's socialize the little bit that is safe to do so right now, and let's just watch some movies and record some shit.
All right, so I know it's been a while since we watched any Fast and Furious the last time we discussed these movies, but what do you sort of remember from what we've watched? Anything you remember from the last movie?
I was really dreading you asking me this.
Because I'm sure you've forgotten everything and blacked it all out.
Okay, so kinda, yeah, but not because like I intentionally did it. I remember enough of the basic idea of the first movie.
Okay.
Especially after seeing it and everyone saying like, okay, now that you've seen it, you understand why when I say that it is Point Break with car racing.
Yes.
What that means. Oh, okay, yeah. Like I can just adapt, even if I don't remember a lot, I can adapt the notion enough to put that together.
Yeah.
I legitimately, and I don't know why, I don't remember much about 4.
So I'll try to summarize.
And that's the one we saw more recently. That was like
Yeah.
April, I think. April or May.
Try to give you the bullet points. So 4
Okay.
was more around. So the end of 1, Dom is on the run.
Yes.
Can't come back. So
Dom and the Lamb. Yes.
Yeah, so his girlfriend Letty, Michelle Rodriguez, makes a deal with Paul Walker, who is suddenly another back to being an FBI agent after giving away the criminal he was after in the first one.
Right. Okay.
So Letty was his snitch. So she was undercover working for this crime syndicate delivering drugs or something, I think, from Mexico, like across the border.
Oh, the Mexican. Okay, yeah. Okay,
So
this is helping. Yep.
She is killed trying to do this for Brian to clear Dom.
Right, and that's like, I want to say the opening per se, but that's
Yes.
at least like easily Act 1.
Yeah. So then the mission becomes like Dom goes in there to try to figure out who killed Letty. Brian's trying to do the same thing. Eventually they catch the bad guys. They stop the drug ring and all that stuff. And Dom gives himself up at the end of the movie. The final shot of the movie is them on the prison bus. And Brian and why can't I think of Dom's sister's
Jordana
name?
Brewster?
Yes. And then some other people in their crew are flanking the bus with cars, and you're left to assume they are breaking Dom out, and then it ends.
Oh, that's right. Like, so we're supposed to believe, like, in that moment, Paul Walker's character, like, finally and formally
fuck the badge,
and
I'm no longer a
entirely...
policeman.
Which, yeah, okay, because I now I remember especially that, because I remember having the sentiment, like, yeah, okay, this one at least had... that compared to the first one, the four... now I'm remembering, had a bit more of a I understand what the personal stakes are for everybody sort of thing, whereas in the first one I felt more like, okay, so in the end they want us to sympathize and cheer for people who are just criminals, and there's not much else. Like, they could be worse criminals, they could be much worse people, but that is who they are, and they're supposed to be basically like our protagonists. So I kind of, okay, now that you're saying this has come back, because they had that really kick-ass, like, mountain tunnel, mine shaft car chasing. Okay, that was pretty cool. I will say that was a pretty sleek sequence. Okay, so but in the end, Paul Walker's like, yeah, I don't want to be in law enforcement. You know what I want to be? A peddler.
So
okay.
Yes, that's sort of where we leave things. Since we're skipping 2 and 3, there will be some characters in this next in Fast 5 that you will see that people are referencing, like, hey, it's like a big get together. Like, I remember seeing you. They were in 2. We skipped 2.
And that was the 2. No, that was not Tokyo Drift. That was 3.
Right. 2 is just called Too Fast, Too Furious.
Okay.
But Tyrese is a big character in that one, so he shows up in 5.
Okay, so and so Tyrese is, I forget, Tyrese is not in the first one.
Correct.
Tyrese starts in 2.
Yes.
He's gone in 3 and 4, and now he's back in 5.
Yes.
Okay.
He is a childhood best friend of Paul Walker's character. So those two characters have a history.
Got it.
And we get Ludacris back in 5, who was the car race mechanic that engineered the races and stuff for Too Fast, Too Furious. He was the underground guy for the races and stuff.
Oh, okay. So I haven't seen him yet either.
Correct.
Okay.
So those two, again, because they're going to show up in the movie and everyone's going to be like, the way they play off each other is that they've been just apart, not the first time they're meeting.
Okay.
So when you see, just so you're not confused when you see these people and everyone's hugging all of a sudden like they haven't seen each other for a while.
I probably would have not remembered that I didn't see them before had you not said
Fair
that.
enough.
But it's good to know, and I'm sure and now that I know it, it'll be probably a better viewing experience.
And then also to refresh your memory, Gal Gadot was in the number 4 that we watched.
Oh yeah, she was.
Yes, so she also makes a return in this movie.
Nice.
I think that's probably at least bullet point wise, least amount of setup you probably need for this one. Again, we can field any questions while we're watching.
Sure.
But I guess on to your thoughts for this movie. Any predictions or expectations?
No. well, expectations, no. As I've heard you all discuss for years, I'm assuming that at some point, if it doesn't start with this, then it will in number 6 at the very latest, that the scenarios created and the actions taken and the feats performed will just start to exponentially become more ridiculous and
Yeah.
probably like unrealistic, or what's the word I'm looking for? Just like I'm gonna guess that for the projection of the series, how do I want to relate this? Recently, we were talking about the Bond movies that Sarah and I had been watching.
Yeah.
I think we did that on a recent "What's Up with You" episode a few
Yeah,
episodes back, and someone, it might have been you even, brought up the idea that a lot of the earlier Bond movies, 60s and 70s, and even sometimes into the 80s, that it felt like the writers or the producers knew what kind of set pieces they were looking for, or some kind of sequence in a particular type of setting, and they just kind of crafted the story to give you a reason, to give you, a mulligan. Why are we here? Do you just need to create the explanation so that we can do the thing?
Right.
And I just misused that word. Not a mulligan. What am I thinking of?
I don't know. I just nodded and said, yeah, okay, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the thing that is just created for the justification for something else to occur. I know we've used this word in discussion plenty of times.
See, now that we're on the spot, I can't think of it either.
Yeah, I know. If you had just needed to use it, you would have.
And anybody listening is probably yelling at us like, it's this word.
Oh, absolutely. They are right now. So apropos that feeling about the James Bond movies, that's what I'm kind of assuming eventually sort of happens with Fast and Furious.
Okay.
There's something that they wanted to shoot. There's a setting that they wanted to be in. There's a thing that they wanted vehicles to do, or planes or some shit. And so they eventually use certain steps at some point to get them to that point, as inconsequential as those other things were, just to provide the setting and circumstances to show you the thing that they wanted to shoot in a movie.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that the story is at least sufferable still at this point, because eventually you will get lost. Like if you keep going down that road, everything, and that's why I stopped really enjoying so much of the Bond movies there for a long time, is the rest of what's happening is inconsequential and it doesn't matter what's going on, so you don't really care. If they can at least keep me interested enough in who's doing what, why are they doing it, what is their reasoning, who does this affect, how are they gonna, then okay, I can at least find something in my 2 hours to enjoy.
Right. Yeah, and I'm trying really hard not to overhype this one for you, because this I think is still my favorite of the franchise.
Okay.
So this one's kind of like if you come out of this one still not liking it, there's no hope for the other movies. Thing I feel like.
Oh God. Okay.
So we will see. I'm hoping this has enough redeeming factors that you have talked about that will at least hold your interest, like you said, for 2 hours. That's the bar for me. Okay.
I can take that. I fingers crossed. I'm going in with an as open mind as I can.
Yeah. I had sort of one other question, but I feel like it's similar to what we just talked about. But if there's anything you want to add, sort of like, I guess, is there anything that you would hope that this movie does, something that might finally draw you into these movies a little bit more? But I think you sort of just alluded to that, of like, as long as the story has people that I can sort of relate to and they have something going on that I understand and can get behind.
Yeah, pretty much that. Like I said, I think that to reiterate again what I said about the first movie, there's the entertainment value, there's the popcorn value of it. That's fine. But after that movie was over, if they never made another Fast and Furious movie, I wouldn't have cared.
Yeah.
Because for me, there wasn't enough stuff in it outside of your sort of routine cookie cutter action movies that led me to really care about the welfare or goals or what any of the characters wanted, kind of, other than Paul Walker, because at least, like, okay, he's a cop trying to catch criminals.
Right.
That makes sense. I didn't super care about him per se, but at least his trajectory was understandable. They need to give me a reason to care.
Yeah, I gotcha.
If they can do that and entertain with the rest of it, that's fine. There's plenty of things I watch that are utter garbage, and I watch them willingly, and we have fun with it. That's fine. It is what it is. But there's rarely after like I'm done watching that thing do I think they should make 6 more of these.
Oh yeah,
interconnected with continuing storylines and characters.
right.
I don't want that. I put in my 90 minutes. I needed to find something because I didn't start watching TV at 8 o'clock and I'm going to bed. So I needed a filler, and this was my filler. That's great. I don't need to hope that I can watch these, one more a night for the next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
If they can get beyond that hump with hopefully this one, then yes, that's what they need to do for me.
All right, so we'll reconvene after having watched the movie and see if this got over the hump for Josh.
Over the hump.
Yeah, but we'll hopefully be back with some added guests to talk about the movie after we've watched it, see what Josh thinks, and that's it for the previewing. So we'll transition to the post viewing. All right, we are back now that we have finished Fast 5, and we have also added another guest. So for the sake of this intro, I'm going to call Josh Fast, so this makes him furious, Mike Bradley.
I'll take that. I'm all right.
Yeah, I don't know how furious
although
you
in
get,
this context, shouldn't I just be 5?
if we're sticking with the title, yeah, you are number 5.
I like it. Like, is that our version of Shake and Bake?
It could be, yeah.
Well, if we do that, it's got to be Fast and Furious, though, because then Fast 5, like, it's, yeah, sure, we could be Shake and Bake like that, but, I mean, how do we transition to El Diablo and Magic Man later? We got to have a shift to something else.
All right, so we have finished the movie, so before we get into discussion, it's time for the spoiler alert. If you haven't seen Fast 5 and do not want any spoilers, please pause this now, come back to us after you've watched the movie. It's a couple years old, so hopefully by now you've seen it, or at least well enough that you can join in. And I just completely blanked out. I'm doing this. I feel like every time we do I try to go off the cuff and talk about spoiler alerts, and my brain just breaks every time we do this now. I'm just gonna leave it in because I think it's funny. So if this is the spoiler alert for Fast 5, come back to us after watch the movie. We'll pick this up when we get back.
Wee-oo, spoiler! Wee-oo, spoiler! Something like that.
So before we sort of like really dive into impressions and what Josh thought, Josh made this comment when we were watching the movie, and he wanted me to bring it up when we talked about it on the podcast. So we're going to get to it now, which was the budget and earnings for these movies.
Right.
So I looked up the one we watched, Fast 5, and for comparison's sake, look for the one before, which was Fast and Furious 4, and then I looked at 6, 7, and 8 just for budget and earnings comparison. So what is your best guess for the budget for Fast 5?
Am I guessing at this too?
If you would like to, yeah.
I'm going to say 160.
Okay. Mike, you got a guess?
120.
Mike was pretty damn close. 125.
I think I would have expected it to be much higher just for all of the physical destruction that they caused and the amount to either build something to destroy or the repairs they would have had to do to real life things that they destroyed for movie purposes.
Right.
I do believe it's probably lower just because of how long ago this was actually made. Like
that could be part of it.
It wasn't that long though. Was it 2011?
Well, I think it might be the difference between a lot of practical effects and there's not a lot of CG, I don't feel like, in this movie. These movies definitely get much more CG effects as they go on.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know, maybe it's just because of the... It's difficult, I guess, to figure out because the budgets obviously go up. So is it the increased budget that is allowing them to do more things in the computer, or is it like, hey, we need to do this effect, we don't know how to do it, let's do it in the computer, and then the budget goes up?
I think partially the budget increasing, especially now, specifically is Dwayne Johnson's salary, for one, and like several of them have much higher salaries these days than they did even during Fast 5. And I think during the film we actually mentioned the thing that they probably spent most of their CG budget on, and that was making Vin Diesel look the same height as Dwayne Johnson.
Yeah.
I
don't know if that was CG. That's just like, here, stand on this box while you stand in front of
platforms or
Yeah.
whatever they do the same thing for Tom Cruise a lot of the time, or they used to at least.
Yeah.
But in this case, it's actually weird because Vin Diesel's not a small guy, but it's like it must be just something.
That big.
Right, The Rock's just that big, but it must be something with like Vin Diesel's ego or something where he doesn't want to look shorter. He's a big dude as it is. I just don't understand what the problem was.
Yeah, it's probably something like that. Like they're supposed to be an even match, so you can't have one have any type of advantage over the other.
Yeah, to some degree. Honestly, it would probably look a little off-putting and a little strange if there was almost a half a foot difference and you're watching these two people fight and you probably just can't help think, well, obviously The Rock's going to beat his ass.
Right.
But I think that makes the win by Vin Diesel better. You know what I mean? Like, if Vin Diesel actually manages to overcome that, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like that's better. You know what I mean? If he's this overly imposing massive thing compared to him, which in reality he actually kind of is.
Yeah.
I think that makes it better to see him overcome that.
All right, so we got the budget. What do you think any guesses for worldwide total?
What year did it come out?
For this movie? Shit, I should
2011.
have wrote down the
It was
years.
2011.
I did not write down the years.
5 was 2011.
2011? Okay.
I know that, is it number 8, I think, made $1 billion.
There were
think
2 of
7
them
and 8.
that made over $1 billion.
Was the last 2, wasn't it?
Yeah, I'm
Like
assuming
just
it's the last
7
2,
and 8,
not
like-
Hobbs and Shaw, but probably 7 and 8.
Correct.
Oh, Hobbs and Shaw.
So I'm going to say, 5, 2011, I'm going to say probably still like 650 million.
I'll
Mike,
say 810.
what'd you say? 800?
810.
Josh was closer. 626 worldwide. 626 million worldwide. It was 210 domestic.
Okay.
The one before this, Fast and Furious 4, budget was 85 million. It made 360 million. So it was about 40 million less budget. Made about 300-ish million less. So 5 started to come around, budget went up, box office went up. 6, the same thing. Budget went up, box office went up. 6 was 160 million budget. Worldwide total, 789 million. 7 was the big one. Now, 7 obviously had a lot of shit around it because that was the last one for Paul Walker. That was a very public thing when he passed. So I'm sure that got more butts in the seats to see what happened with this movie. And that could even be why some of the budget even went up. This maybe could have came in at or around 6, but because of the effects work they had to do to replace Paul Walker in the movie, that could have bumped the budget up some more. So budget for 7, 190 million. It ended up with 1.5 billion worldwide.
Jesus Christ.
Only 353 million was domestic.
And it's the Asian market that blows these movies up huge.
Yeah, so these movies make a shit ton internationally. 8's budget went up again to $250 million for that movie. It made
right.
1.2 billion. It went down a little bit domestic. It ended up at 226 million domestic, so it was a little bit down from 7, but it's still making a shit ton everywhere else.
Yeah. Yeah, both of the last 2 made $1 billion international.
Yeah. So we're gonna see what the obviously 9 got delayed until 2021, so we gotta wait and see what happens with 9. See what the budget is, what that pulls in. But
does it have that
all right, so
what
we'll
Hobbs
spin
and
around
Shaw
to-
did?
what's that?
I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but I was just wondering if Hobbs and Shaw was on the list you're looking at.
I didn't pull the stats for that one.
Okay.
I guess I probably could have.
That one's just like their star power, you know, like
Yeah, because I guess it wasn't the mainline franchise. It was more of the spin-off stuff. So I wasn't sure if they would put that much money into it, considering it was a spin-off type of thing. But let me take a quick peek.
Well, while you're doing that, I'll point out that Furious 7, even though I know the focus of this is Fast 5, but Furious 7 is the 9th highest grossing movie ever.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Fate of the Furious, number 8, which is yes over the billion mark, is number 19. Fast 7, Furious 7, whatever the hell, made only $3 million less than the Avengers
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
worldwide, and it did it a year before that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
God damn it.
So yeah, there is a market for these movies, hands
Wow.
down.
Doesn't
all right,
that mean at one time it was like the top, like one, like at that time when it came out, it would have been what, 3?
it was in the top 5 for sure, and
It
then
was
more
pretty damn
Avengers
high.
movies have come out and pushed it out of the top 5.
Well, I know didn't like Titanic re-release to take that top spot of like domestic from the Avengers again? Like the Avengers
did.
passed it, but they re-released it like statewide or state
It
in
might
the
have.
states to do
Yeah.
that.
Domestic, I'm not sure at a quick glance here, but you're right. If in 2011, like looking at the top 10 to 15, Avengers Endgame was not released, Star Wars Force Awakens was not released, Infinity War, no, Jurassic World, no, The Lion King remake, no. It may have been the 3rd highest grossing worldwide movie ever at the time it was released,
Yeah.
Yeah.
just behind Avatar and Titanic.
Right.
Shit.
So Hobbs and Shaw, the spin-off that is the most recent release for the Fast and Furious franchise from 2019. Budget for that $200 million, ended up at $759 million worldwide.
Ooh.
Okay.
Was that the highest budget of them all? I missed what Fast 8's
Eight
budget
had
was.
250.
250. Okay, so nearly second highest budget, and
Yeah.
came in nowhere near the others.
And it fell comparably to Fast and Furious 6.
Mm-hmm.
Made less domestically than Fast and Furious 6. It was only 174 million domestic. So again, these movies are still making 3/4 of their worldwide earnings overseas.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get into the movie. So Josh, general thoughts on this movie, and then I got a couple specific questions I'll ask you.
Sure. So some of the bigger questions that there's sort of been like a through line of our discussions of these first 3 that we've watched thus far have been, that I reiterated sort of in the beginning, is, do I care about these people? And I'd say between the combination of number 4 and number 5, I am starting to a little bit more.
Okay.
Not tremendously, but a little bit more. And I think here's why. The first one being just a copycat of Point Breeze.
Point
Like
Breeze.
by the no, oh god. We're from Pittsburgh, folks. Point Break.
They know what that means.
Point Breeze is a neighborhood in the city of Pittsburgh. Anyway, Point Break. In my opinion, by the end of Point Break, you're not supposed to like Patrick Swayze. You're not supposed to care. I think they're depending on the relationship that builds between him and Keanu Reeves for you to care about the fate of Patrick Swayze in the end. But if you don't, because you're looking at the person that Patrick Swayze's character actually is, then all you're left with is a bad person who loses in the end.
Yeah.
And so the first movie, that was all it was, still in the same. As I've mentioned a few times, there's really not, quote unquote, like really good things about these people that you should be rooting for, like at least not on paper.
Right.
Turning the focus on what they're doing against seemingly worse people is probably a better way to create anti-heroes.
I gotcha. Yeah.
Because
okay.
they're still not, in my eyes, they're still not necessarily good people or
Well, you made numerous comments, I feel like, as we were watching it about like the collateral damage of innocent people that are dying because of what they're doing and who they have possibly have killed in the past in other movies that we've watched, and yet they're still trying to be like, the movie is painting them as this redemption arc.
to some degree. I mean, there's definitely there's a flavor of redemption they build in there, but I think they're just relying on the audience to just take for granted that these are the people we're rooting for regardless, and that way you forgive anything that they do.
Yeah.
So like, for instance, and now before I go to like one of my first notes I wrote down as we were watching, to just kind of close out the question you asked, I think am I caring about what they're doing? I think yes, a little bit more, just because they don't seem to be as self-serving of goals and ends as the entire first movie was. So they're utilizing their relationships and their skills and whatnot to kind of F over worse people.
Yeah.
Almost in a quasi-Suicide Squad-esque type of capacity. But yeah, one of the first things I wrote down from the opening of the movie is they absolutely, every one of them, have a blatant disregard for other human life but their own and the people that they specifically know. And I do not accept that bullshit explanation that you tried spinning me when they overturn a bus of inmates to let out one person that either, and you didn't say it out loud, so, but I'm presuming it meant one of two things. Number one, well, you made the point that, well, if they got Vin Diesel out alive, that's a good indication, or we're supposed to believe that everyone else is fine.
Right.
Because he got out. So everyone else survived.
But they're
blah, 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 blah.
inmates, so it's okay.
But right, so but the other way you skirt that is, well, they were inmates, they were criminals. So if harm becomes to them, should we really feel bad about them? And the answer is freaking yes, because that's not how society works.
And as part of it, I don't think I was paying close enough attention to that part, but we see a couple numerous news reports at the beginning of the movie after the bus is overturned and you know, prisoners escape and type of stuff. I wouldn't be surprised, and we might have missed it because we were too stuck on Perd Hapley showing up. They might have mentioned, like, you know, there were, you know, no casualties or something in that news report to, you know, very specifically say no one died.
Maybe that did happen. You're right. Perd came on screen and nothing else mattered in that moment. That was a happy surprise. However, they could not have guaranteed that, and I don't think they cared.
Yeah.
As they were putting that stunt together, they assumed there was whatever they were doing, Dominic would get out of it in good enough condition that they could get away with him, and that's all they cared about.
And, you know, it goes past the logic of, like, that bus would have plowed through that car without thinking twice. There's no way that car would have taken the hit, been fine, and the bus would have ramped off of that car.
Yes.
Buses are not made for that type of thing.
Especially probably, like, transporting prison buses.
Right.
I'm doubting.
You need those GTA ramp cars to make that happen.
So it's like almost like right at the beginning of the movie, and you know, we've talked about this numerous times. There's very light physics going on here. Like, you can't think about the logic of how this should go, and it's these are very much in the vein of just popcorn movies. Turn your brain off and just watch what happens.
Sure, and that's fair. And I think I did make a point to that as we were finishing the viewing, that it's moving in that direction.
Yeah.
And I can take a little more for that. The entire third act, the entire climax of the movie, as well as when they are trying to steal the cars from the train initially that sets off the rest of the plot of the movie, during that whole altercation, like that is a cargo train that is still full of people. There are human beings controlling that train, and they crashed that tow truck into it that easily could have derailed that or caused it to become damaged, explode, etc., whatever, causing even more further damage and loss of life to innocent people. And yeah, the entire climax of the movie, I guarantee 462 people at least were killed during all of that. All in the vein of just teaching that one drug guy a lesson. We don't like him.
I know the explanation I had for that.
How
point
did
is
you
like
arrive at that specific number?
Say, like, you definitely see the cop cars getting demolished. Like, this safe is crushing people in the cars.
And it's going, like, at one point, like, as it's swinging around the streets, it's sweeping through, like, first level, whatever they are, office space, restaurants, diners,
buildings.
whatever's on that street level. They're just freaking sweeping them out of the way. There's no convenient explanation that, oh, they just happen to be empty. Of course. No. There's dozens of people destroyed by that or crushed under rubble now. who are all probably dead and or lifetime maimed. But hey, our crew got their stunt taken. You know, they
even
pulled
if
it
the
off.
1 in a million chance that nobody got harmed by that happens, you've still got all the destroyed cars. And what I was going to say is, we all know car insurance, it definitely covers being crushed by a safe pulled by criminals. They're totally going to cover that.
Not to mention all these families that are now going to be out settlements. Well, because the life insurance policy didn't cover that.
Yeah.
But I did write later. I did say, I get it. It's a ridiculous action movie that at times they want it to be taken seriously.
Yeah, that's a good description.
And that's, I think, going forward, that's going to be the next hurdle for me to get over. That I don't yet perceive, and again, this goes from my baseless, completely out of my ass impression that I feel that Vin Diesel as an actor or a performer has somewhat of an ego problem, or potentially could, and because of that, he, at least in this series, does not want to be viewed as not serious. He is Dom Toretto, and he is driving those cars. He is absolutely to be taken 100% seriously.
Yeah.
But until the movies seem to be self-aware and reflect that a little bit more, it's going to be harder to just sit back and enjoy the popcorn nature of it while while I'm not supposed to be sort of laughing at it. I'm supposed to be so invested in the earnestness and the serious nature of these characters and what they want and what they're standing for. I can't do both yet.
I think there's definitely
that way it'll be helpful.
There's definitely a spot where, like, the further we get into this, there are movies that just really start to lean into like the self-aware, like, we're just going to be ridiculous for ridiculous' sake.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And I think this one, and I think 6 hit a sweet spot for me, where there's sort of what you described, where they are getting to the point where they are getting ridiculous and the stunts are getting out of control and they're just kind of fun to watch. Doesn't matter why they're doing things, but it's cool visuals on screen.
Mm-hmm.
But the movie is still trying to move a plot forward and get you invested with these characters and what's going on. These are the ones that work best for me. I think if we get to like 7 and 8, some of those start to jump the shark for me, where I'm like, what, really? This is what you're fucking doing with this movie now? But you know, at this point I'm invested, so I'm going to watch all of these wherever this franchise goes. I am in it till the end. Ride or die, right. Motherfucker. Mike, how do you feel about the movies themselves? Like, I get, maybe this one specifically is this a sweet spot for you? Do you like the more ridiculous, less ridiculous? Where do you fall in the spectrum?
So for me personally, there's not any one of the Fast and Furious movies that I genuinely don't like. I mean, I don't take them seriously. I take them as the popcorn entertainment. I'm able to shut off and do that. And even 2 and 3, I enjoy. I don't go back and watch them a bunch of times or anything. But when I come back to them, I'm like, yeah, this was still good to watch. This was a good time. And you can pick these movies apart piece by piece by piece by piece, and they're not going to hold up to anything. Like, if you look at the science, if you look at that makes sense, or you look for the plot holes or anything. But if you just have fun with it, they're fun. And as far as the series goes, Fast 5 being a high point versus low point, I mean, I kind of feel like it's pretty widely accepted that 4, 5, and 6 are like the best movies of the series.
I think they work the best together too. Just as like if you were going to pick a trilogy to watch of Fast and Furious movies, those are the ones that play off of each other the best.
Agreed. Because I mean, like 1 and 2 don't have a whole lot of connective tissue. I mean, it's what, one character carried over from 1 into 2.
Yeah.
And then 3 has none of them until the spoilers.
The very end, yeah.
Yeah. And then 4 brings the whole group back again from the first movie. So it kind of like continues on that same path that the first movie was telling, and other than bringing in Tej and Roman from 2, it kind of ignores the others as well.
Yeah.
So it did a good thing and a kind of whatever thing, where even if you like those characters, it still went the right route for these 3 movies at least. And I think we discussed like 7 and 8 start to get more and more and more ridiculous and more about the stunts and special effects and less about the plot.
Yeah.
Which I'm still okay with.
I couldn't tell you shit about what happens in either of those movies, but I've seen them.
I remember 8. Charlize Theron's in 8, right?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, see, I completely blocked her out. Forgot about her.
And it starts in Cuba, if I recall correctly.
I think, yeah.
That's all I've got.
Okay. Yeah.
I remember them being on a plane at some point. Like, he's on a plane with her. Like, Dom is on a plane with Charlize Theron's character at some point.
That sounds right, I think.
But yeah, as far as why, or like, I remember a bit of why, but I don't want to spoil
Yeah, we'll save that.
things. But I do remember a little bit of why he's there. And isn't there like a plane stunt they do? Like with cars driving onto a plane or off of a plane or something?
I don't know. I feel like there's a couple plane stunts. Every time I think of a plane in Fast and Furious, I think of the end of 6, which we'll get to.
Okay, maybe that's the one I'm thinking of then.
And everything you guys are saying, I am presuming either absolutely could or does happen in any of these. Like nothing nothing you're saying so far sounds ridiculous enough that I'm going to think, oh no, surely they don't do that.
Yeah.
As we said earlier, 9, they're planning to be in space, right? So
I'm wondering, I've tried to look for, I haven't taken the time to go through that quote or where that was said. I think context of quote and how, because it was Michelle Rodriguez had said something about like, oh man, like someone asked her like, I heard you guys are going to space. And she's like, oh man, you guys heard that? I thought we were trying to keep stuff a secret. You know, somebody says one thing and then it's out there. Like, was that a sarcastic comment or are you actually surprised someone got that? Like, I need to know how that was said because the quote itself could go either way. So is she just egging someone on or is she confirming something? I would not be surprised if they go to space.
No.
But everyone's reporting that this is happening because clickbaity headlines, and this is the bullshit that I hate about the internet. I think it was said in like a video interview or a podcast or something. So that would very well tell you the context of how this was taken, and no one seems to give a shit about that. So I am aware of said quote. I just haven't taken the time to dig into said quote, and that's why I never posted it on like the podcast page because I thought it was full of shit. But
if I had to put $5 down on it, I would say it's bullshit because once you do that, there's nowhere else to go. And if you have 3 more movies, theoretically, after that, the only place you can go is to, like, the core of the earth.
I mean, they're probably going to hit every, like, blockbuster movie trope by the time this is all done. So I would not be surprised. Space adventure like Armageddon.
If they got there at some point, but, yeah, like, other than going inward or outward, there's nowhere else to go. And once you do that, you can't do it again, and there's nowhere further that direction.
Right.
So why blow that load in number 9?
Aliens.
Yeah, they could be the last hope against aliens.
Oh, God.
They go to space, and it's just a race. It's kind of like a race in space. They get there, they do a thing. They let that go for, like, number 10, but they get to number 11, and aliens actually notice that space race, and they come down, and now they have to race aliens.
It's like Space
Street
Jam,
racing
but
style.
like with cars.
Exactly. They come down and they're like, we're going quarter mile. Let's do this for the fate of the earth.
And meanwhile, the aliens just teleport to the finish line and then kill us all.
Well, that'd be cheating.
If you want to, factor in the cheating. Yeah, that's a whole other, that's number 12. 11 is the race.
Yeah.
12 is the fallout. Josh, what did you think of this? Because this movie sort of takes a shift, and then the franchise kind of follows suit afterwards, but it shifts to more of a heist movie instead of more of, it's still a quote-unquote car movie, but
right.
They shift the focus to this whole heist they have to pull off for the movie.
Yeah.
Do you like that shift? Is that more interesting to you?
I mean, given my personal interests, yes.
Okay.
Granted, I forget if I said this on the first movie or not, but there actually seemed to be less like in the weeds screen time dedicated to car talk than I thought there was going to be. for my personal tastes and my interests and just what I'm good at, etc., a shift away from that kind of focus, yes, is more interesting for me.
Okay.
I mean, given sort of, I mean, the first two, the first two, these last two, number 4 and number 5, I wouldn't say they sounded like a carbon copy of each other by any means, but there's definitely some similarities in the approach, like in a way that like a common enemy has to be found, a person worse than whatever illegal things that they tend to do. Whereas I feel like they kind of position their stuff as like, well, they're just stealing things. These are drug runners. These are sex traffickers. These are the real bad people. Like, and they're in the 7th circle of hell, whereas our guys are like kind of chilling out on the 1st. And so therefore they have to do a thing to stop what that entity is doing. So that was very common between the last two. And so I guess like I would assume that something like that has to kind of persist through.
That is an ongoing thread.
Like there's going to be something else that they need to do a thing to stop some other worse person from continuing to do a thing.
Yeah.
Because
You're
otherwise, what kind of conflict is there for these people to do unless it's all like internal group infighting or something? And like once you get to the scale that they've gotten to at this point, you can't go backwards.
I am a little bit waiting for, like, now that the cast is this big, because it does kind of expand every movie, if they're going to get to, like, their version of Civil War.
Oh,
like, is something going to
awesome.
happen where this group has a falling out of some kind? Like, that could be interesting. And like Josh said, to bring it back inward, instead of just keep going out and out and out to something else, some external force trying to get to this
race
group.
Wars.
What's that?
They go back to race wars. See what Johnny Tran's up to.
I mean, but they Race Wars has a cameo in one of these other movies. I can't remember which one. What, like one of the later ones after this one. It might even be the next one.
Like they like open the movie at Race Wars. Like they're just kind of hanging out,
just
and
to be like, hey, remember this thing we went to in one? It still exists.
It's back
Yay.
again. but what I was gonna say, Josh, to defend what they were doing in one, and you're saying like, oh, they're stealing things, they're bad people, and all that. You know, the sheriff of Nottingham would have said the same thing about Robin Hood.
Yeah, but we know the group that Robin Hood was serving with his actions. Toretto's seems to be, I just don't really want to be like a regular legit person, so I'm going to steal things because it's easier to get stuff quicker that way. For me, and maybe an extremely small circle of people around me.
Oh yeah, his family.
Don't
forget the family.
I know, and we talked about that. We ran a tally of how many times that was specifically mentioned.
And how are they going to get
Fast
chicken and
Five.
Coronas if they don't steal VCRs and DVD players? Because I'm pretty sure that's what they were stealing back then. Wasn't
I
it
think
like
that was the
fucking,
first one, yeah.
Like, yeah, it was like electronics that would cost 10 cents today. So,
Yeah.
in retrospect, it was really just petty theft. I mean,
Right, which I get, but that's all it was. It was self-serving.
yeah, but who was he
Petty
stealing
theft.
from? You know?
Other people. Like, he wasn't stealing from criminals. Like, he wasn't, that's the thing. Like, with the first one, it wasn't like, I'm robbing the other bad people, so really what I'm doing isn't that terrible.
Or the people who own the corporations that were selling the DVD and VCRs, were they good people? You don't know.
This time around.
You don't know. You don't know. They could have been exploiting people and paying them low wages. They could have been making those in sweatshops in China for all you know.
And yeah, but
And
that's
now
all
they're
that
being
is.
stolen by Dom Toretto and redistributed at cheaper prices.
You are gaslighting me like Ian normally does you.
See, Ian's not here to set him straight, so he's got to do it to somebody else now.
No, I don't buy into that conjecture, that like easy way to explain something that they didn't. If it was that important and they didn't bother telling us that, then I'm not assuming that.
Yeah.
So like I said, it's easier to buy at least the idea of an anti-hero through what they're doing in these last two than it was to give a crap about them in the first one.
Fair.
Josh, this is the first Fast movie we got with a post-credit scene.
It was, and I think when you revealed that, I said it's 2011, so yes, a few, maybe at that point 3 Marvel movies, we'll say generously, Iron Man 1 and 2 and Incredible Hulk had been released, and had done that, but that was not really like the established thing that people already realized. Like I feel like it took at least to the Avengers, if not halfway through Phase 2, for people to understand like, oh, that's the Marvel thing, and they just started staying at the end of credits for every movie they ever went to see after that.
Right.
So
I feel like Avengers did it. I feel like the Thanos reveal in Avengers is what really.
Oh, that was a big kick. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what really did it.
And so, I mean, this one, they were kind of riding the curve slightly ahead of everything else with that. I'll give them that. It didn't have as much of a punch for me, since you told me that one of the characters that is revealed in that mid-credit scene is a character from the second movie.
Yeah.
Which we skipped, and that I will probably not care to go back and watch on my own.
Well, see, I was just about to ask a question about that. So now that you've seen this movie, and you've seen were Tej and were they in the fourth? I can't even remember.
No.
Okay, so the first time they come back is here. So Roman Pierce and Tej show up again here. You get Eva Mendes' character in the post-credit scene. So you still have no desire to go back and get their origin story.
No, I don't think so.
That sort of comes back to like sort of, I guess, this question. Are there any characters that you care about? Like, we talk generally, like, do you care about anybody? And you sort of said, you know, you're getting there. But is there any specific characters that you can latch on to and say, yes, I'm invested in you?
Invested in an individual, I don't think quite yet either.
Okay.
But I will say I was surprised that Ludacris was as likable in this
Okay.
as he was. I for some reason I would have thought that if a filmmaker is utilizing Ludacris as an actor, that he would have been placed there to be a little bit like over the top, perhaps obnoxious.
That's your Tyrese character. That's Roman.
A bit there, yeah. Yeah, and you could still have Ludacris be a different flavor of that as well, but I actually found myself kind of like, oh, okay, enjoying his screen time.
He honestly should do more than what he does acting wise. He's actually pretty good.
I'd have to look up some of his more, like, if he's had other roles more recently other than Fast and Furious, because I know he was probably in a couple more things in like the early 2000s and like the first part of the decade. But yeah, he actually wasn't that bad. I don't necessarily find myself rooting against any of them, but no, I don't know if I could pick out an individual from the group yet and say like, oh yeah, that's my person. I wanna make sure I ride their, I ride their story all the way out and make sure I'm invested and see what happens. Not there quite yet.
Okay. Yeah, because that could make a difference of how you feel towards the movies going forward. If there's still nothing for you to really latch onto and get invested to, then I don't know how much these movies will win you over one way or the other. It's sort of where I'm trying to figure out where to go. Just compared to the other two Fast and Furious movies we've watched, where would you rank this one?
Probably at least a tie with number 4.
Okay.
I guess as we've taken one more half step in establishing that they are, regardless of the collateral public damage that they are causing, that they are at least trying to do something, not entirely in their self-interest. They did that in 4 and doing that again in 5. I guess this might go like a hair ahead of 4 now that you've done that part of it again.
Right.
But yeah, that definitely a step above the first one so far. I will say a highlight for me was the first moment that The Rock's crew lands, his unit lands, and he gets out of that. Was it it's an aircraft of some kind, I think.
Yeah.
He walks down the ramp. The first time you see that Rock goatee, wow. It's that's a goatee.
You're not used to seeing him with facial hair.
I mean, I feel like he used to at some points, off and on. But it's been so long since he has all of his roles the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years have all been sans facial hair and bald.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I can point to exactly what happened there for you.
Go ahead, fill it in.
So, as a wrestling fan at the time, he famously headlined 2 WrestleManias back to back with John Cena.
Okay.
Year 1, facial hair. Whole thing going on. He loses. Year 2, no facial hair. He wins. Since then, he's just sworn it off, you know.
It's as
Because
easy
it's
as
not
that.
scripted or anything like that as to what happened. It was because of the facial hair, and it was real. And don't tell me different.
It's still real to me, damn it.
That poor soul.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, like he gets off that plane and there's just like this commanding presence of him. And I as stupid as it sounds, that goatee is part of it.
The Rock's character, Hobbs in this movie, I think, is is different than what he ends up being later.
Okay.
The character kind of, most characters, I guess, when they stick around in the franchise long enough, they just kind of morph into other things. He's still great, but I think this movie is like my favorite with him. I think the one-liners that they write for him are so fucking like 90s action movie Macho Man that I fucking love them.
Well, and he throws more of the southern accent in.
So, yeah, he tried. There's sometimes he has an accent, sometimes he doesn't. It's hit or miss there.
Like the time I didn't realize that is what was occurring until you put it that way, because there's some of his little clip phrases that seem like they're trying to make him sound folksy,
Yeah,
but it's otherwise like kind of otherwise out of character a little bit, because it doesn't like mesh with the rest of him.
right.
Like the one where his I forget if it's the cop or someone on his team is giving him background info. And he
I like
he
my dessert first.
Yeah, and then later he's like, all right, well, I need the bad news. He's like, all right, give me the veggies. And you're right, like that is total like 90s action cop movie dialogue.
I fucking love it.
So I just realized something. I'll have to, I don't know if it's mentioned in Hobbs and Shaw at all. Probably not, because these movies would not be known for that kind of consistency. But he plays that southern accent, right? In this first film. Hobbs and Shaw, he goes home, literally to where his mother is, in his home in Samoa.
Maybe he did a summer abroad in Alabama.
I'm just saying, I feel like there's a definite inconsistency there.
I think by the next movie, he just drops the southern accent completely, so no one gives a shit anymore. I think it's just like we're making this up as we go.
I feel like it's still there a little bit, though. Like, I feel like he still uses some of the terminology, the slang and stuff like that as the character later on, just because that's what he does naturally. Like, it's The Rock doing it, but The Rock himself's, like, his own origin is like Samoan and African American from the South, like Samoa and like the South, and it plays in, and I think he lets himself shine through a little bit more on that. And I think it's just like some of like him being him, but his character is supposed to just be from Samoa.
Well, since you pointed out, I'll have to pay attention more in at least number 6 to see if he hangs on to it at all, or as Brian thinks that it just kind of like slips away and they're like, no, we don't even care if anyone notices. This is just what we're doing from now on. Too bad.
And maybe just because I stopped paying attention to it, but that was the impression that I'm sort of remembering, is that I feel like by the next one, it's just like his character shifts a little bit into the next one too. But and maybe that's part of it, where it's just like, it's just The Rock was a bigger name then. It's just like, who cares? The Rock is in the movie. Let's just go with it.
Yeah. There's other shifts that the characters take after this. I'm not going to get too far into it, but it gets ridiculous.
Oh, it gets ridiculous?
It compounds the ridiculousness.
I did make a comment. I remember at one point, I was disappointed that I did not have more tallies in the mention of family column as I was hoping for. And I think I said that I would love to see a South Park episode that does like a parody mockery of Fast and Furious. Because I forget what the scene was that's happening, but I think somebody's getting it. Oh, I remember. Paul Walker and what's his name? The guy from the first one that comes back.
Vince.
They are getting into an argument in the garage, and Vin Diesel comes over to break them up. And I thought, like, in a South Park episode, that'd be the perfect moment where the character just comes in and all he says to them is family. family, like trying to move them apart, keep the peace, spread them apart with his hands, no family, bro, family,
Yeah,
and just like drill that to death.
I could see it.
Yeah, sadly, my tally was only up to 4 for Fast 5, and I think one of them was in Spanish.
I mean, well, yeah, it was. We'll have to keep the tally going for whatever other ones we get to. See if it's bigger or less.
Something I didn't remember that disappointed me. There was no Coronas being drank in this one.
I do remember that being
other
pointed
beer.
out.
Yeah.
Does that do you recall? Does that stick, or do they go back to Coronas? Because
I feel like
it was a
definitely
trademark.
hits Coronas again at some point.
Maybe they lost them as a sponsor that time around.
Or they just can't get them in Rio. I don't know.
Oh yeah, maybe maybe they were trying to keep it realistic. That one aspect they were keeping grounded. Like, look, man, everybody knows that Corona does not have a viable distribution channel set up in South America here.
So I'm sort of just gonna wrap up with this. And Josh, I think you mentioned it when we were watching the movie, or maybe when we were done, that Kevin Smith is going to do his own sort of like segment for podcast and dive into these because Kevin Smith hasn't seen them either.
That is what I'm hearing from the Fat Man Beyond podcast. It sounds like in the next couple of months they are going to possibly do this, which means that they're mimicking us and we're better and original.
That's right. Write it down. Mark today on the calendar.
Yes.
We did it first. But it was sort of wanted to spin for that maybe, depending on, because I know you're a big Kevin Smith fan. So if Kevin starts watching these movies and somehow gets some enjoyment out of it, I'm kind of hoping that gives you a little bit something else to latch onto and I don't know, helps these get a little bit better for you. Because I feel like we're struggling to get you through them. And so I'm going to throw this out there just because the only ones I really wanted to watch with you specifically were 1, 4, 5, and 6. So 6 is next.
Right.
When we get through 6, I will give you an out. If you are still not enjoying these at all and you have nothing that is really compelling you to want to see anything else, we can pivot to something else.
We'll see.
It's something we can talk about, but I'm throwing it out there because honestly, after that, the other movies are hit or miss. In my opinion, we would have watched the best meat and potatoes of the Fast and Furious franchise if we get through those 4 movies.
That's fair, and I will say if that's where we stop, I would not. I can't see myself on my own just randomly picking any of the others up or rewatching these.
Yeah,
necessarily, like just because now that I've seen some of them.
Because even like just sitting there in the room with you watching the movie, like I feel like I can't tell if you're enjoying it, and if you're not enjoying it, I don't feel like I don't want to subject you to it any more than I have to. It's just the idea of this is to hopefully find something that someone likes. So if I am more or less forcing you through these, then we can definitely try to pivot to something else.
Yeah,
I think the problem is finding finding something else that you haven't seen. That's where we sort of are the hang up at.
Yeah, exactly. So we can see when we get there. I know part of it undeniably is the initial bias that I had going into it at all. I am trying to find positives in it, but I'm already coming from a place of digging myself out of not liking it. Like that, I know going in no matter what, that's like I'm not being able to clear my mind enough to say, all right, I'm watching Fast 5 now and I'm a completely clean slate.
Yeah.
I'm looking for positives, but since I'm already I'm starting the movie in the negative, and the few positives may not be getting me far enough out of that hole. But it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm not angry that that's how I spent my time or anything. I'm not, absolutely hating every second sitting there just watching TV.
Okay. Yeah, so we can decide, I guess, where to go from 6. If it's worth continuing, because like I said, I feel like that would be the best of the batch. If it doesn't get you over that hump, I don't think it gets better from there. So you'd be going in knowing that these movies, at least in my opinion, are worse than the ones you've seen already.
Fair enough.
So if we do not want to go downhill after that, we can try to find something else.
We could also work out the machete order to watch these in. Since there is we were talking a bit about the back and forth in the timeline you can get.
Yeah.
Maybe that would interest him more, just to dice it up and be like, what was the correct viewing order? You can inch him into the other movies being like, you gotta figure out how to watch them right.
I mean, it almost sounds like to some degree that's what you've sort of done. I don't know if you intentionally wanted to skip 3 because you think it's inferior, or because, as you've described through 4 and 5, that it chronologically in the timeline hasn't happened yet.
Kind of both. 3 I think focuses more on the stuff that you don't give a shit about for this franchise. It's much more. It becomes much more. It's still the car movie.
Mm-hmm.
So it's focusing on a different aspect of car racing. It's a movie about street racing that's all about the drifting, which again you don't give a shit about.
Not really.
It features none of the characters that have been seen before. So some of them occur later, which we're seeing some spillover from that movie into the movies we're watching now. But again, you don't need to see that one to get what you're getting in these ones, because chronologically, the movies we're watching take place before 3.
But 3 has a Zachary Ty Bryan cameo.
Are you serious?
Yes.
As himself?
No, he makes an appearance.
Oh, that would be better if it was himself.
To me, it would have been better if he was Brad Taylor, but I'll take it.
Yeah, so we'll have to see where we go. If we wouldn't have seen the majority because there's going to be 9. So, and if you count Hobbs and Shaw, that's 10.
Right.
So we'd still see less than half, but again, and who knows, maybe 9's going to be amazing and maybe it'll redeem, start going on the up and up again for this franchise, but until then, this is what we're stuck with.
Yeah, no problem.
So anyway, any closing thoughts from either of you for Fast 5?
No, I think I got everything out. I hit all the bullet points and notes I had written down. I will say I will be kind. I think the actors are doing a good job. There's other than my Vin Diesel bias specifically, there are moments where his acting is a little bit better. Everyone else is doing a good job. I don't get the impression like people are trying to phone in what they're doing. They're having a good time with it. So yeah, I will leave that as a positive.
Okay. Mike, any closing thoughts for Fast 5?
I mean, not particularly. It's fun. I don't have, I've seen it several times, so I don't have like any standout different thoughts about it this time than any other.
Okay.
My apologies, Mike. I didn't mean to talk over you. I did realize that this was Justin Lin directing again, and I think, Brian, I asked you this when we were watching, that you think he directs 4, 5, and 6.
And I think he did 3 too.
Okay.
You might have to check my math on that also.
So at least this, arc that you're having me watch, it is, I mean, I heard all about it at the time that it was announced and that it happened, but it's actually now making much more sense that people had the reaction that they did when he was given Star Trek Beyond.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, you're going to give Star Trek to the Fast and Furious guy.
Yeah.
What are we going to get out of that? And, a couple little things in there that people could maybe point to of like, yeah, that seems very Justin Lin-y. But,
yeah.
I mean, overall, like I said, it's just sort of making more sense. And to be fair, I enjoyed Star Trek Beyond. I thought it was well. But yeah, just kind of connecting those threads, I'm understanding better now.
Yeah, I've heard Justin Lin talk about taking the gig to direct Star Trek Beyond. He's actually a very big Trekker, which I did not know. And so that makes me even more excited because I love Beyond. I think Beyond's a really solid Star Trek movie. And he did it. I think he did, especially for the. I'm trying not to get sidetracked, but under the gun of that movie, like the production schedule and writing for that movie was done in an extremely short amount of time to get that movie made. And I still think, all that considered, they made a great fucking movie out of that. And spinning back around to Fast and Furious, 9 is going to be Justin Lin again.
Oh, okay. So he went away for a bit and he's coming back. So, but this is the one that was supposed to be out earlier this year, right? It was one of the first that got really delayed.
I think I'm trying to scroll IMDb as we're doing it, but I think 8 was 7 was James Wan.
Really?
I think.
Huh.
Because he was coming off of like the horror movies, right? He does horror movies.
Mostly, yeah.
So he got the unfortunate task of trying to make a movie work when one of your stars dies in the middle of production. after taking it up
yeah.
after Justin Lin, I think, did a very good run of 4 really good, 3 and maybe 4th really good Fast and Furious movies. And then 8, I think, was the guy that directed Straight Outta Compton, I think. I'm trying to hurry up and check this out, so check my math. Yeah, F. Gary Gray was
okay. Yeah.
Fate of the Furious, who also did Men in Black International, which we won't talk about.
That's a good idea.
So, yeah, the director, they started doing directorships again, and I don't know if it's just like Justin Lin was looking for something else to do, or they realized, like, hey, we might have had the most success with this guy. He knows the franchise, knows what's going on with these people, and just putting him back in there. So I am excited to see where 9 goes, just because it's a return for Justin Lin, and I think he's done some of my favorite ones. But, again, we'll have to wait until sometime next year to get a glimpse at that. Yeah, I don't think I have anything else to add. Last call. I think we're good, but last call.
No,
Nothing?
I think we hit everything I wanted to.
Okay. So Josh and I will work out another movie to trade. I mean, obviously we know which one I'm going to trade for him. I think he has something in mind for me, which we will get to sometime later. At this point, we're just going to wait till next Halloween and we'll just trade again just to stay on brand. No, I'm sure it'll be before that, but that was me joking. So if you enjoyed the show, please support us, leave a 5-star rating and review. Give us a share on social media. Make sure you follow and subscribe to keep up with the show. You can find us on Spotify, iTunes, Google, Anchor, Stitcher. Hopefully anywhere you find a podcast, you can find us. You can check us out on Facebook. Search Bry Guy into Super Friends or go to facebook.com/BryGuySuperFriends. You can send us questions, comments, topic suggestions, any of that stuff there. Or you can tweet us at BGSuperFriends on Twitter. Try to email us, bryguysuperfriends@gmail.com. It may or may not work. I feel like I've tried it before. It's still hit or miss. Sometimes I just don't check it at all. On behalf of Josh, Mike, and myself, thank you for listening, and we will talk to you next time.
I mean, I guess I can just talk and you can
go ahead.
include this in here because I figure there's something we just talked about, shake and bake, And I'm thinking, when are we going to get a Ricky Bobby appearance in a Fast movie? When's Fast and Furious going to have Ricky Bobby join the crew?
I mean, I'm pretty sure they've said they're getting up to like 12, right? As of they wanted to plan that far ahead right now.
And I'm just wondering.
They're going to find Ricky Bobby in space when they get to space in the next one.
Ricky Bobby and Cal Naughton, they need to join the team.
Yeah.
I want to see it happen. You want to get me in a theater again for one of these. That's how you do it.